Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am Aaron, and this is the Inclusive Dad podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me in exploring ways we can create a more inclusive world together. You are important, you matter, and you can make a difference. Today, my guest is Lisa Richer. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, thank you so much. Why don't you just start us off by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
I'm going to start with something I don't typically start with, but because the name of your podcast and what you believe in, implementing inclusivity is extremely important to me. I have two different frameworks, and one of them actually has to relate lowercase i's, and it's for implementing inclusivity. So I'm a big believer in the mission that you're working on here, and I think it takes all of us to really truly do that appropriately. I'm a mom of two neurodivergent boys, 15 and 19 now. I grew up undiagnosed neurodivergent and very late diagnosed. And I run a neurodiversity consultancy where I'm a neurodivergent success partner. Oftentimes, when I go into schools, I call myself a neurodiversity consultant. And really, what that means is I take all of my varying eclectic background from my professional, personal, corporate, parenting experience, and I bring it all together to work with the teams, not for the teams, with the teams to do what we need to do for a child or a person in general to be able to be included.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Let's start off. What is your definition of inclusion?
My definition of inclusion is a psychologically safe place where people belong, can be vulnerable, and can share what is important to them. So you may not understand someone, but you can appreciate those differences, and we all work toward whatever those goals are.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. So growing up, did you have any exposure to like disability or neurodivergence when you look back?
A lot of it. I mean, unknowingly, I am, or I was. I didn't know then, but I know now. So, um, and surrounded by it, family members, friends, as I became a mom of not just one, but two neurodivergent children, I started to look back on so many things that happened throughout my childhood, the understanding of what these differences were. Went to school with different abilities. So some people had physical disabilities, some had mental struggles, and others just were different, but we called them you were either a problem child, had a learning disability, or you were nonverbal autistic, right? Like those were the things. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. Like those were the things that you bucketed into. So I definitely had a good amount of exposure, but also grew up in my schooling and my athletic experiences were very inclusive by default. We just were all people. Others may have had these walls up, but I just thought everyone should be included because why not?
Yeah. So for me, I just looking back, I don't remember like hearing the word disability. My daughter uses a wheelchair. Don't remember seeing people in wheelchairs or anything like that until she was born. Now I'm guessing there had to have been, kids in special education or people with disabilities. I just don't remember them because wasn't familiar maybe. But yeah, it's interesting how other people such as yourself have a lot of, had exposure where I just never did. So it's kind of interesting.
Well, and sometimes you don't connect it. So anybody listening, please do not take this the wrong way. I'm using verbiage that we used when I was a kid. But I still remember kids getting off the short bus. Those were the contained classrooms. They called it the short bus. And somebody got off of the bus that was half the size, you knew they were going into a contained classroom. And so unknowingly, I had a lot of people that I knew that were involved in that, in those facets. But it wasn't until later that I connected those dots.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I went to like a private Christian school, K through eighth grade. So I'm pretty sure we didn't have anybody in that setting. It was small. I knew all the kids, but yeah. Then I went to a public high school, and yeah, it's still. I mean, like I said, they probably were there. I just wasn't paying attention or had no connection to them. So
Kinda
yeah,
like you get a car and you
yeah,
don't realize there's so many cars in the road, like the one you have until you get the car.
yep,
Right?
yep,
So,
for
yeah.
sure. Yeah. Um, you used a word that you're a can you tell me what you call yourself? Like a neurodivergent
Yeah, a
consultant or
neurodivergent success partner.
okay. Why
Do you
did you
want
choose that over like, because I've heard like advocate or IEP coach or different like that. Is it similar or different? Do you want to talk about
it
that a
was
little bit?
absolutely, it was very intentional. So, when I started my business, I've been doing this work about 20 years now. But when I started my business in 2016, um, I was calling my business Bloom Special Education Advocacy. And what was happening was, oh, you're a special education advocate. And the experiences that many of the schools had with that. So I have a very eclectic background. I have behavioral training, I have mindset transformation. I was an elite level athlete. I worked in corporate, lots of different. I don't have a school like education background directly. I was an English major. That's as close as I would get to like a school background. But I started out as the special education advocate. That's what I called myself. But what I kept getting met with, and if we're not doing this visually, with like my people will come in like arms crossed, like the minute I came in, and like, oh God, here we go again, another advocate. And so when COVID hit, I recognized a couple of things. One, that I really had so much more to offer to people because I had gone through not only personal, but as an athlete, in a corporate world, as a parent, being looked at as less than or different, or at least being made feel that way. And so I thought, okay, well, if I'm getting squished into a box, being called a special education advocate, I want to break down that stigma from the very beginning. I don't want to walk into a room and automatically have a problem engaging with people. And so in the midst of COVID, I rebranded to neurodiversity consultant. And then over the last couple of years, have shifted even more into, I will call myself that, but also neurodivergent success partner. The reasons are some of what I just described. People wrap their arms around me and lean in and say, oh, interesting. Tell me more about what you do. So instead of being met with, oh God, here we go again, I get met with, oh, so what is it you do? How do you know so much about these things? And people open up, get curious, are more inclusive, right? So and I've seen so many of those shifts by changing it. The neurodivergent success partner is, I truly believe that I am a success partner because I work with you, not for you. And I am neurodivergent. So to me, it was a great descriptor of who I am and what I do. And that's how I came up with that.
Yeah, thanks for that explanation. Because yeah, you are right. Once I've done some advocacy work going to IEP meetings with people. Yeah, and once you show up and you call yourself an advocate or that thing, yeah, it's they're put on their defenses and it's hard to throw. It kind of gives a different vibe to the room, so that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Sure, of course.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your framework, your two little I framework, and what that entails?
Sure. So there's two frameworks here. One is my clarity, confidence, and courage journey map. And the clarity aligns with the internal, the confidence aligns with the relational, and the courage aligns with the systemic. And so when people bring their why to me, we use that framework no matter which domain they're coming to me from, if you will, like which world they live in. They're bringing me their why. All those things are well and good, but without what was my original framework, ripe ideas. And in the space that we live in here today, I will share what the whole word stands for, or the whole phrase. So it's reflect, implement, practice, and evaluate. I lowercase, because you have to implement in small increments, practicing over and over. And the ideas, lowercase I, is inclusion. The D is for diversity. The E is for um, equity. The A is for accessibility, and the S is for sustainability. Now, accessibility to all. So, not, you mentioned your daughter's in a wheelchair. It's not just accessibility about a ramp. It's accessibility for all people to understand how to work with, partner with, align with, support one another. And then the sustainability isn't sustainability of like the environment, it's sustainability of doing this consistently across the board with fidelity long term so we can truly implement inclusivity across the world. So those are the two frameworks and the ripe ideas, if you will. If you think about the old overhead projectors, so the clarity, confidence, courage journey map, that's my map. We focus on those pieces of the puzzle every time. But the ripe idea sits over it. And then when the light shines through, like those overhead projectors, when you're implementing the ripe ideas consistently, then things start to change. And you can focus on each of those pockets of clarity, confidence, courage, but without reflecting, implementing, practicing, and evaluating, we never get to um, true inclusivity. That's my perspective.
Thank you. How did you come up with those? Was that just stuff like when you're working with your own children, you kind of came up with it, or how did you come up with those frameworks?
It's interesting that you say that because I talk about the messy middle and I always talk about the like what I do and how I do it because that's how my brain works. Over initially, I guess it was almost 5 or 6 years ago now with the ripe ideas, people kept saying to me, "Well, what is the name of the framework?" And because I was pitching for to go into schools, to go into organizations, and they were like, "Yeah, but we need a name." And well, this is partly why I left corporate in the first place because I was like, "Yeah, I just want to do the things that actually move the needle," but they needed a name, and so Ripe Ideas came out because I worked that way for over 20 years, way back when I was an athlete, through college and corporate, but I never named it. And I knew that the implementing things in small increments was really important. As an athlete, you have to warm up, practice, do tricks, and then build upon to get to a routine. And then ideas was just that. It was just ideas. And then somebody said to me, "Well, what does it stand for?" So I'm like, here we go again. And so because of the world I live in neurodiversity and inclusion, that's what I named it. And then slowly but surely decided I knew the I's were the most important for me. And so I dropped them to lowercase so they stood out. And oftentimes I'll get, well, why aren't they uppercase? You misspelled it. No, I didn't. Like, I mean, they're there for a reason. They're standing out for a reason. And inclusivity is often not the thing that we focus in on the way that we're describing it. And so I wanted them to be lowercase because they're not big and bold. They're the things that people often gloss over. And so basically, what happened was I took all the things I've been doing over the years and I put a name to it so that other people that don't understand the way I think could wrap their heads around it. The clarity, confidence, and courage, that one has been around since I rebranded my business to be called Journey to Bloom. Three of my package offerings for the parent side of the world are clarity, confidence, and courage. And yet, and one of them is called the clarity, it's called the journey map. And I would talk about how I did everything I did, but I never put it out there as though it was one of my frameworks. So, I don't know, less than a year ago, it became a known framework, and I talk about it now a lot. And so everything in the middle that made sense to me that others that don't think like me didn't get, now they understand it too. So, in essence, these are things that I've been doing throughout my lifetime that have now become frameworks that other people can understand because I put a name to them.
Yeah, thanks for that explanation. What elite sports were you in, or elite sport were you in?
I was a gymnast.
Gymnast? Oh, did you get to the Olympics?
I did not. I fractured in my back. And I was an Olympic hopeful. I went on the Olympic gold medal tour with the '84 Olympic team. I competed internationally for the US in the '80s. So I was in the junior national team several years. And then the big years, an injury, and then I get better, then an injury. In '88, I had fractured my back for the second time. And that one really took me out for a year. So I did not get to go to championships that year, to Olympic trials. but I am very close friends still with numerous Olympians. I'm part of an alumni association that we focus on getting together. I haven't been able to see people in a long time, but we just kind of come together to work with one another and in hopes of ensuring that the future of the sport is is a better place than what we were involved in. And in a lot of ways it is getting better. In some ways it's not yet. But yeah, it really shaped a lot of who I am. I spent 5 to 8 hours in the gym, 5 to 6 days a week, depending on what time of year it was. And it was my safest space for a long time and the place I felt most like me. Being neurodivergent at that point, unknowingly, my body knew what I needed before I did. The spinning, the flipping, all the, sensory regulation, everything. It was just, it was what my body needed to do until my body said it was no more. So, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So who were like the gymnasts, those like 84, 88 Olympics? I was born in 77, so I probably know some of the names or
Yeah.
recognize them.
So 84 would be Julia McNamara, Tracy Talavera, Kathy Johnson. Um, and then on the guy side, Bart Connor, Peter Vidmar, um, and Mitch Gaylord, and so forth. In 88, Hope Spivey, Missy Marlowe, Phoebe Mills. Those are some of the female ones on in the 88 team. And then I know people on like probably 92 is the last one. I was born in 72. So 92 would be the last one that I directly know people. And then I know them because some of them trained at my gym and I would go see them, but I wouldn't say that I know them well enough to call them a friend.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Thank you.
So you said you got to travel internationally? Like, what are some of the countries you got to go to with it?
I did. And funny enough, my older son brought up. I have a huge trophy from a meet in Catania, Sicily, and after the Arsenal won the whatever, I don't remember the name of it, whatever they just won for the first time in 22 years. My son went downstairs and got like the big trophy and because it's huge, it's like really tall. And so Catania, Sicily, Italy, Japan, um, England are some of those are probably the farthest places I traveled.
Really cool.
Yeah, thanks.
That's interesting. Interesting. So yeah, you said that you can kind of tell looking back that that's how you kind of use like the stuff gymnastics to kind of regulate yourself, or I mean that's interesting because that the
Yeah,
spinning and stuff helped you.
absolutely. I mean, with ADHD, it was constantly in motion and could never really focus. Didn't know why, didn't know what was going on. But when I was in the gym and I was able to just really focus and do what I needed to do, it just kept me grounded and and in a good mindset and a good mind space until I got injured, right? And then things would spiral. And when I look back on that as a younger self, I think about, wow, now it makes more sense why things would get out of control to an extent that I would say, what's going on? Because my body wasn't getting that sensory input and what it needed in order to stay regulated.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't have a diagnosis, but I can kind of look back now. I do some like DBT stuff for different mental health stuff in my day job, and it's like I look back and I would chew my pen caps a lot or doodle a lot or different things too, where we didn't call them coping skills back then, but I was obviously had figured out some things to kind of regulate or, get through the day. So it's interesting when you are looking back, you kind of recognize some stuff. Like I was doing some things that we call certain things now that figured it out by ourselves. So it's kind of fun.
It's interesting that you bring that up. I was on a podcast last week and they were asking me what I considered like neurodiversity umbrella, and I had put for me when I look at it, the whole umbrella, it's like everything from anxiety to ADHD, autism, dyslexia, like they're all under the umbrella. But what was interesting is the mental health professional that was one of the two leads on the podcast. He questioned that. And it was really interesting because I hadn't had anybody bring up this perspective. You look at everything online and it talks about like all the umbrella, but what he was saying is that ADHD, autism, dyslexia, I call them the Ds, dysgraphia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, those are things that you're born with. But the anxiety, depression, PTSD, those are things that often I don't know. I mean, I wonder if you can be born with anxiety because of certain things, but the way that this medical professional was talking about it was that they're two different subsets of things. Because I don't call any of these a condition. I say they're neuro differences, and those differences, you have to learn how to work with them in order to know how to work with yourself and with others. But what he was describing was that, like, the anxiety, depression, those don't those are conditions. They are medical conditions, and they fall into a different category than, um than the other things I was describing. Now, when I think of neurodiversity, I think of those that are related to outside factors and those that you're born with. But he really separated them, and I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. So it was really interesting. I don't know if you've ever thought about that, but just bringing up what you were saying about the pen caps, things like that, like some of it is just nerves. Some of it might just be a little bit of anxiety. Um, and it's really funny because I never hear people say everyone has a little bit of anxiety, but sometimes people will say everyone's a little ADHD. And I always say I completely disagree with that. Everyone's not a little ADHD, but everyone may have stressors. So that would make a little bit more sense to me. And if you're thinking about it from those two separate compartments, like he was describing to me last week, maybe there's something to it.
That is very interesting. I've never thought of it that way, but that is, yeah. I mean, haven't done much research on like, yeah, which ones are like you're born with or which ones come from outside factors or if I mean, I do know some of the mental health stuff, like if you have people in your family who have a certain diagnosis, you're more likely to have that diagnosis yourself, so there must be some genetic stuff to some of it, but yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. I was just curious because we're
Yeah.
sorry, I took you down a little bit of a rabbit
No, you're
hole.
fine. That's interesting.
I found it interesting and I hadn't asked anybody else what their thoughts were.
Yeah, but that kinda shows though, like, the word neurodivergent, like, what is it? Like and I've come up with this for, like, inclusion too, like, we had this issue when my daughter was in school, like, we'd like, "Hey, we want more inclusion." Go to the IEP meeting, it's like, "Yeah, we're on board, the school." I'm like, then you find out their definition of inclusion is just she goes to lunch with her peers, and it's like, okay, so it kind of reinforces sometimes we have to, like, when I say neurodivergent, this is what I mean, and trying to figure out, what you think it means, so we're on the same page. Because otherwise using the word neurodivergent, I have my own definition, you have yours, and then, like, at some point, we may come across, like, "Okay, we're thinking about this differently because that doesn't make sense with my definition." So, yeah, sometimes we need to figure out what each other mean for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where meeting in the messy middle and being willing to be vulnerable and have these conversations. Neither why can't both be right? In some cases both are right. Sometimes both cases are wrong, right? So it's just being willing to have the discussion.
For sure. What are some of the things that you kinda see keep coming up with when parents are contacting you? What are some of the common-ish things that, they come to you for?
Yeah, some of their whys. Well, help my child is having issues with behavior and I know there's something more going on. I don't know what to do. My child is failing in school and no one will help me. Um, they're trying to take my IEP away. They're I know there's something happening here. My child can do the work, but they're not giving them what they need and I don't know where to go from here. And then sometimes kids will have had IEPs for quite a while or they're trying to get a 504 or whatever, depending on their circumstances. And the parents have tried and tried and tried to get what the child needs. And the school team's not listening to the parents and the parents aren't listening to the school team. So there's lots of different variations of reasons people come to me. And sometimes I try to really be that partner like I was describing because even the experts only know what they know. And it's really difficult for me when an expert in a specific area hits something that's new to them and they're not willing to get creative. They're not willing to bring in like the central office team and have other people. I have a conversation tomorrow, very similar where I'm at the border of do I reach out to the central office team and say we need someone from your team here because they're missing something and good isn't good enough. An appropriate public education for one child is going to be very different than an appropriate public education for another child. And I find that the schools are not trained appropriately to understand all those nuances, and they don't feel many schools, many teachers, I feel comfortable saying this because I have clients as teachers and I work with teachers. They don't feel like they have the authority to offer out creative ideas. They're worried they're going to get in trouble. And that really, all that hurts is the child. So all those different variables come into play when people reach out to me. Right before I came on with you, I had a message. I haven't even read it yet. And it said, help. I need help with my child. I don't even know what the email's going to say, but I'll get things like that. And I'll get others like, hey, we're just getting started in the process of going into kindergarten. Somebody referred you to me and I want to be proactive. So I get complete opposite ends of the.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So yeah, my daughter, she is, let's see, 23 now, or yeah, she's 23 now. So out of the education system, I mean, so I haven't been keeping up with a lot of the stuff that's happening. Has the landscape been changing the last couple of years with all the stuff in the news about education and stuff, or is it not as bad as everybody's saying?
In some ways, it's worse. In some ways, it's okay. It really depends. There's pockets across the country of really good stuff. There are schools that are getting very creative and doing things, but when it comes to the comprehensive public schools where the public funding is coming in, especially those that don't have like the charter schools and magnet schools, like the county that I live in here in Maryland, we don't have those things, whereas 2 counties down have other options. So even within our state, there's pockets of really good and pockets of just disaster happening. Um, Budget cuts, jobs are getting cut, staffing shortages were already there, training isn't happening. And so, yeah, it's as bad as it's described. And honestly, and sometimes it's probably worse. And in some places, it's better. Like I was saying, it happens in pockets. So there is not a one size fits all answer for that. Um, I would say that if someone's saying it's great, it's because they're lucky and they're in a school that is great.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me because even like the inclusion stuff with my daughter, it's like you, it so much depends on the the current administrators. Like if they're super pro inclusion and they want that, then it's there, and then they leave, the next person might not be, and now you're changing. So it's so it yeah, it's hard to tell as a parent like what's the best place because it could be now or it might not be, but then next year the person moves and something changes and it's different. So it's yeah, it's very that was one of the frustrating things.
Yes, that is one of the number one things now that people don't necessarily come to me to get help with, but they ask questions of. So I'm in a bunch of different parent groups and things that people pull me into, and I'll offer my guidance, and everyone has an opinion. Everyone has an opinion. My response when somebody says, what county, what school, my response is pretty consistent. Don't move to a county for a specific school. My example is both my kids ended up in private because what we thought was happening ended up not happening. Administrators left, teachers left, other teachers came in, schools got redistricted. So there's so many variables. Budget cuts, that's another variable, right? So you go and you find where you want to live, and hopefully there's schools that are good in that area that continue to be very good. And if not, just know you either, if you want something different, you may have to move or you may have to go private. So my actually add-on recommendation now that we're talking here may be look for a county or a township, depending, or a city, depending on where you live, because every state does it a little different, that has the ability to allow you to go to your comprehensive school, to go to a charter school, to go to a magnet school, because when you have those options, you're more than likely to have the ability to find a place that works more appropriately for your child. And a lot of times on the county's dime without having to go through like a placement team process because there are other options. Some states allow for funds. So where my parents live in Arizona and a friend of mine that lives in Georgia, they give, if they want to go to a different school, they actually get gifted back funds, county fund, like tax funds to go and pay for that other school. I think it's called a school voucher. We don't have that in our county. So we don't, not only don't have the charter schools and these magnet schools where I am, we don't have the ability to even take the funds. And we're one of the highest charged counties in the state for taxes. And so I hadn't even thought about that till just now, but that's going to be part of my conversation with people now, because if you have options going in, then if something doesn't work out, at least you don't have to move.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What is one tip you can share to help listeners be more inclusive today? So just something anybody can start doing today to be more inclusive.
Thing. Be willing to ask, to understand, not ask to respond or react to something. So in different words, when you ask a question, truly try to understand that other person's perspective, you may actually learn something.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Thank you. If there's one thing you hope listeners take away from your story, what would it be?
It's not a one size fits all. There are so many variables to so many facets, and it goes back to that how to be inclusive. Um, just know that you may be in your own ocean, but you may be in a similar boat, or you may be in a similar boat in a different ocean. There's always somebody else out there that is going through something similar that may not truly understand you, but is willing to appreciate what you're going through. So if you're in a world right now where you feel like you're on your own island, you're probably just surrounded by the wrong people.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where's the best place for everybody to connect with you?
My website, journey, the number 2, bloom.com. My email address is lisa at, same thing, journey, the number 2, bloom.com. And then I'm on the different socials. On YouTube, I do push out some videos that I put on my socials. So that and Insta are both at journey, the number 2, bloom. So very easy to kind of
Hmm.
consistently remember. And then on LinkedIn and Facebook, it's my name.
Awesome. Thank you. Ready for the last question?
Absolutely.
Do you like spam lunch meat? Yes or no? That was fast. That was really fast. So I live near Austin, Minnesota, where they make spam and where the spam museum is located. So I've been asking all my guests just to see what the reaction is, and it's usually like that, either a fast yes or no. There's usually not a lot of like, I don't know.
I'm sure there's people that really don't even know what it is. Like if I talk about pork rolls, which are very popular in Pennsylvania, a lot of people go, "Well, is that it? What is that?" So you never know. You never know.
That's
But
true.
I love that. I was like, that's an interesting question, but my answer is definitely no.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for being on the show today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Those listening, thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey. It is truly an honor. Please join the podcast newsletter by clicking on the link in the episode description to keep up with the latest episodes. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.